In 480 BC, 300 warriors stood against an army of over 200,000. They knew they would die. They stayed anyway. And by choosing death, these 300 men saved Western civilization as we know it. This is the true story of history's most brutal last stand. Think about those numbers for a second. 300 versus 200,000. Odds of 667 to 1. The entire Greek civilization, democracy itself, hung in the balance. By the end of this video, you'll understand how 300 dead men changed history more than most living armies ever could. You'll discover the shocking betrayal that sealed their fate, why they chose death when escape was possible, and the brutal final moments that made them immortal. But here's what the history books don't tell you. Why did Leonidas choose only 300 men who had living sons? What did the cryptic oracle prophecy really mean? And how did a local Greek shepherd doom the defenders? How could 300 men hold off thousands for 3 days? How did their deaths lead to victory? These aren't just questions, they're the keys to understanding how 300 corpses saved civilization. At the center of it all stood two kings. The Persian god king, who watched his elite forces die by the thousands, and the Spartan king who smiled as he died, knowing something his enemy didn't. The number is almost impossible to believe, 300 shields that held back an empire. To understand how this happened, how bronze met flesh and history pivoted, we need to go back 10 years to when a Persian king first dreamed of conquering Greece. 10 years before Thermopylae, at Marathon, something impossible happened. A small Greek force humiliated the mighty Persian Empire. The Persians retreated. For the first time in history, the unstoppable had been stopped. This humiliation festered in Persian royal blood. When Xerxes inherited the throne, revenge became obsession. But Xerxes wasn't just any king. Ancient sources called him the God King, builder of impossible bridges, commander of the earth's mightiest army. He spent a decade preparing to erase Greece from existence. What happened next defied every rule of ancient warfare. Xerxes built a bridge of boats across the Hellespont, over a mile of open water. When storms destroyed it, legend says he had the sea whipped 300 times for defiance, then built it again. 2 million men marched across, if Herodotus is believed. Meanwhile, in Sparta, a different king prepared. Leonidas, the lion, born under prophecy that Sparta must lose a king or lose itself. Unlike Xerxes, who ruled millions, Leonidas ruled just thousands. But what thousands they were. You have to understand what Sparta was. Not a city, a barracks. Not citizens. Weapons. Boys taken at age 7, trained to kill or die. By 30, they were the ancient world's most feared warriors. While Persian soldiers were farmers and craftsmen conscripted for war, every Spartan was professionally built for one purpose: combat. Then Xerxes made a decision that would haunt him forever. Instead of sailing straight to Sparta, he chose to march through a narrow coastal pass, Thermopylae, the Hot Gates. 100 meters wide, mountains on one side, sea on the other. The math alone is staggering. 2 million Persians funneling through a space smaller than a football field. Leonidas saw opportunity where others saw suicide. But the Spartans had trained their entire lives for this moment. While Xerxes moved chess pieces on a map, Leonidas studied the ground where he would die. The oracle's prophecy echoed: a king must fall. Leonidas knew it meant him. Here's where the story takes a dark turn. When Leonidas called for warriors, he didn't want Sparta's full force. He selected only 300 men, specifically men with living sons. Think about that. He wasn't choosing soldiers for victory, he was choosing men whose bloodlines would survive their deaths. But how do you stop a force that darkens the sky with arrows? How do bronze shields hold back an empire? The answer waited at a narrow pass by the sea. The Persian force defied comprehension. Ancient sources claim over 200,000 combat troops. Modern historians debate the exact number, but all agree it was massive. 1,000 ships darkened the Aegean, engineering corps who could build bridges from nothing, supply trains stretching to the horizon. Against this, Greece assembled 7,000 men. Only 300 were Spartans. The rest, Thespians, Thebans, other Greek cities, brave but not bred for death, like Leonidas's chosen. Together they marched north to the narrow pass, each step taking them closer to immortality. Picture this scene: Thermopylae, the hot gates, named for sulfur springs that still steam today. The pass, barely 100 meters wide at its narrowest. Mountains rose like walls on the left. The sea crashed against cliffs on the right. A single phalanx could hold it. But Leonidas knew something Xerxes didn't. This wasn't just favorable ground, it was a killing floor. Persian numbers meant nothing if only a few could fight at once. Their cavalry, useless in the narrow confines. Their arrows, shields could roof against them. The brutality of what followed shocked even hardened veterans. As Greeks took position, Leonidas addressed his 300. Historical accounts record his words to the Spartan, who complained about Persian arrows blocking the sun. "Good, then we'll fight in the shade." But fate had one more cruel twist. A hidden path wound through the mountains, known only to locals. If found, it would allow Persians to surround the Greeks. Leonidas posted 1,000 Phocians to guard it, praying it stayed secret. What the Persians saw next broke their spirits before battle even began. The Spartans exercised naked, oiling their bodies, combing their long hair. To Persians, this looked like madness. To Spartans, it was ritual, warriors preparing their bodies for funeral rites. The Spartans' response still gives historians chills. When Persian scouts reported this behavior, Xerxes laughed. His advisor, a Greek exile, warned him, "These men are preparing to die, and prepared Spartans are the deadliest force on earth." Then came the moment that would echo through millennia. Xerxes sent an ambassador, "Surrender your weapons." Leonidas gave 2 words that still ring through history, "Molon lab," come and take them. The archaeological evidence reveals something horrifying about what came next. Thousands of Persian arrowheads, broken spear points, and human remains compressed in a space smaller than a city block. The killing ground was prepared. What followed wasn't a battle, it was a massacre. But first came 4 days of psychological warfare. Xerxes waited, expecting Greeks to flee at the sight of his multitudes. Each sunrise the defenders stood firm. Each sunset, Persian confidence eroded. On the eve of battle, Leonidas gathered his 300. "Eat well," he told them, "for tonight we dine in Hades." They knew. Every man understood this was their last meal on earth. And still they stayed. The numbers tell a story of impossible courage. 300 Spartans, 700 Thespians, smaller groups from other cities, perhaps 7,000 total. Dawn would bring 200,000 enemies to their bronze shields, but the dead would have the last word in this arithmetic of courage. Then Xerxes made his first mistake. He assumed Greeks would break like every enemy before them. He would learn why Spartan mothers told their sons, "Come back with your shield or on it." Dawn of the 5th day brought decision. 4 days Xerxes waited, throne positioned to watch Greek fear build. 4 days the Greeks exercised, joked, prepared. The psychological battle was over. Now came blood. But the most shocking part was yet to come. Xerxes sent his Median and Sicyan troops first. Not his best, but good soldiers who'd conquered nations. They advanced in waves, confident in numbers, expecting quick victory. Then everything changed in a single moment. The Persians hit the Greek line like a wave hitting a cliff. Bronze shields locked, spears thrust. The narrow pass became a meat grinder. The first truth of Thermopylae: Persian numbers meant nothing. Only the front ranks could fight. Those behind pressed forward, pushing comrades onto Greek spears. Spartans worked like a machine, thrust, withdraw, thrust again. Their longer spears gave reach advantage. Their heavier armor turned Persian strikes. What Xerxes didn't realize would cost him everything. This wasn't combat, it was systematic slaughter. Greeks fought in relays. Fresh warriors replaced tired ones. Persians couldn't rotate in the press of bodies. Exhausted men faced fresh killers. By noon, Persian dead carpeted the pass. The math of it stuns historians. Hundreds fell each hour, perhaps thousands by day's end. Greek losses, minimal. Spartans trained since childhood made killing look effortless. Then, Xerxes made a decision that would haunt him forever. Furious at mounting losses, he sent in specialized troops, different uniforms, different weapons, different tactics. Still, they broke on bronze shields like water on stone. The pattern repeated with horrifying efficiency. Persian wave advances, meets Greek bronze wall, front ranks die on spears, bodies pile up, making advance harder, Persians stumble on their own dead. Greeks stand firm. Wave retreats. Next wave advances. But here's what the history books don't tell you about that first day. The psychological destruction exceeded the physical. Persian soldiers saw supposedly inferior Greeks slaughtering their comrades without effort. They saw the god king's mighty army stopped by 300 men. As afternoon sun beat down, the killing floor revealed its horror. Persian corpses piled so high they formed obstacles. Blood made stones slick. The narrow pass stank of death and voided bowels. Still Spartans stood, still Persians came, still the arithmetic of death climbed. What Xerxes saw from his golden throne changed him. His troops, veterans of countless victories, broke against Greek discipline. Some Persians reportedly had to be whipped forward into the killing zone. The unstoppable force had met an immovable object. Here's where the story takes a dark turn in Persian morale. As dusk approached, Xerxes recalled his battered forces, thousands dead, Greeks still standing. The impossible odds suddenly seemed reversed. How could millions fail against so few? Night fell on a scene from Hades itself. Greeks built a wall from Persian corpses. Under torchlight, they repaired equipment, tended few wounds, prepared for tomorrow. They sang hymns to death gods, voices echoing off mountain walls. But Leonidas knew something Xerxes didn't. This perfect defensive position had one weakness: the mountain path. If discovered, if betrayed, the narrow pass advantage vanished. He doubled the guard, prayed to gods who demanded sacrifice. The numbers tell a story of impossible courage from day one. Conservative estimates put Persian losses at many thousands. Greek dead, perhaps a few dozen. But numbers don't capture the psychological victory. The god king's aura of invincibility shattered in one blood-soaked day. What happened next defied every rule of ancient warfare. That night, Xerxes called council. Some advisors suggested naval flanking, others proposed starving Greeks out. But the god king's pride was wounded. He had one unit still uncommitted, his personal guard, the Immortals, 10,000 elite warriors, called Immortals because when one fell, another immediately replaced him, keeping numbers always at 10,000, the best Persia offered. Tomorrow, they would end Greek resistance. But Xerxes had one card left to play, his Immortals, and what followed would make day one look like mercy. Dawn of day two brought Persia's finest. The Immortals advanced in perfect formation, 10,000 elite warriors in scaled armor, every man chosen for skill. Greeks watched them come, these soldiers who'd never known defeat. What followed wasn't a battle. It was a statement written in blood. The Immortals expected tired enemies, weakened from yesterday's fighting. Instead, they met fresh Spartans who'd trained their entire lives for this moment. Then came the moment that would echo through eternity. As Immortals reached spear range, Spartans did the unthinkable. They broke formation and ran. Persians surged forward, sensing victory, discipline breaking as they pursued fleeing Greeks. The trap snapped shut with horrifying precision. Spartans wheeled as one, reformed their line, caught Immortals strung out in pursuit. What followed was butchery. Elite Persians, formation broken, died like sheep. The pretend retreat, a Spartan specialty, claimed hundreds in minutes. But the Spartans had something more powerful than numbers: experience in the killing zone. They knew every stone, every slope. Immortals stumbled on yesterday's corpses. Spartans danced through familiar ground, spears finding gaps in Persian armor. The archaeological evidence reveals something horrifying about the Immortals' fate. Their distinctive scale armor, found crushed and pierced, tells of close combat brutality. When spears broke, men fought with swords. When swords bent, they used shields as clubs, helmets as weapons, even teeth and nails. By midday, the unthinkable happened. The Immortals, Persia's untouchable elite, retreated. They left hundreds of their number among the corpses. The psychological blow to Persian morale was devastating. If the Immortals could fall, what hope for regular troops? What the Persians saw next broke their spirits completely. Greeks piled immortal bodies separately, displaying them like trophies. The message was clear: your best are nothing to us. Then, everything changed in a single moment of betrayal. As day 2 ended in Persian disaster, a local Greek named Ephialtes approached Xerxes' tent. Deformed, rejected for military service, burning with resentment, he carried information worth a kingdom: the secret mountain path. Night 2 brought counsel in the Greek camp. Leonidas knew time was running out. 2 days of victory. But how long before Xerxes found another way? How long before Greek unity cracked? How long before the gods demanded their promised royal blood? What Xerxes didn't realize would cost him everything later. By sending his best against the Greeks and watching them fail, he'd created a legend. Word spread through his vast army. 300 Spartans were worth 10,000 immortals. Fear replaced confidence. But fate had one more cruel twist prepared. As Greeks celebrated their second day of impossible victory, Persian forces guided by the traitor Ephialtes climbed the mountain path. The 1,000 Phocian guards, caught off guard, fled to higher ground. The path to Greek rear lay open. A runner reached Leonidas before dawn of day 3. The Persians had turned their position. By sunrise, they'd be surrounded. Escape was still possible. Darkness could hide retreat south. Here's where the story takes its darkest turn toward immortality. Leonidas called his allies together. The tactical situation was hopeless. He released the allied forces, no reason for all to die. Most left grateful for life. But the most shocking part was yet to come. When Leonidas turned to his 300, expecting similar departure, they began preparing for battle. They knew, they'd always known. This was why he'd chosen men with sons, not to save bloodlines, but because men with heirs could die without ending their line. 700 Thespians stepped forward. Their commander spoke: "We stay." No Spartan blood in their veins, no lifetime of death preparation, just free men choosing to die beside the 300. History often forgets these volunteers who chose death when life was offered. The Spartans' response still gives historians chills today. They began funeral rites for themselves, oiling bodies, singing death hymns, preparing for the journey to Hades. One joked about finally getting a good night's sleep, another that his wife complained he never stayed home anyway. Dawn of day 3 revealed the trap's completion. Persian forces massed at both ends of the pass, tens of thousands visible, more beyond counting. The mathematics of courage reached its ultimate test, perhaps 1,000 Greeks against an army's full weight. Leonidas addressed his men one last time. Historical sources differ on exact words, but all agree on the meaning. Today they would teach the world how free men die. What happened in those final hours still haunts historians studying the archaeological remains. Greeks abandoned defensive positioning, advancing into the open to kill as many as possible before falling. This wasn't defense anymore. It was a statement of defiance written in Persian blood. The arrow storm came as promised, thousands of shafts darkening the morning sun. "Good," laughed Xerxes. "We'll fight in the shade." Shields raised like roof tiles, Greeks advanced under the deadly rain. Close combat reached new levels of savagery. Spears shattered on armor and bone. Men fought with broken weapons, fists, teeth. Leonidas led from the front, killing until Persian arrows found him. His men fought to retrieve his body, a swirling melee of unprecedented violence. Then came the moment that would define Western courage forever. Leonidas fell, pierced by arrows and spears. Spartans went berserk, fighting like demons to recover their king's body. 4 times Persians seized it, 4 times Greeks took it back. The brutal final moments unfolded as sun climbed higher. Greek numbers dwindled, weapons broke, Men fought with whatever remained. The final few retreated to a small hill, Leonidas's body in their center, facing outward as Persian masses closed in. But courage has an arithmetic all its own. Even in those last moments, Persians died in droves, approaching the final Greeks. Warriors who'd conquered nations hesitated before men who welcomed death. The end came with arrows, not swords. Xerxes wouldn't risk more close combat losses. Thousands of shafts turned the last defenders into pincushions. The 300 were gone. The 700 Thespians lay beside them. The pass was taken. As the last Spartan fell, Xerxes thought he'd won. He had the pass. The road to Athens lay open. But standing among thousands of his dead, staring at 300 Spartan corpses who'd cost him so much, something cold touched his heart. If 300 could do this, what would thousands do? The immediate aftermath revealed the true cost of victory. Xerxes ordered Leonidas's body found among the dead. What he did next violated every rule of ancient warfare. He had the Spartan king beheaded and crucified. Even his own advisors were shocked. Greeks honored enemy dead. This mutilation was admission of how deeply the 300 had wounded Persian pride. The death toll painted a grotesque picture. Spartan and Thespian casualties, 100%. Every man who stayed died where he stood. No retreat, no surrender, no survivors. They achieved exactly what they intended. A death so glorious it would echo forever. But here's what the history books don't tell you about Persian losses. Conservative ancient sources claim 20,000 Persian dead. Modern historians debate, but all agree on massive casualties. The god king traded dozens of soldiers for every Greek. The arithmetic of courage had balanced impossibly unequal scales. What happened next defied every rule of ancient warfare's aftermath. Instead of being demoralized by the defenders' deaths, Greece erupted in rage. The 300 sacrifice didn't break Greek will. It forged it into something harder than bronze. The news spread like wildfire. 300 men had held off the world's mightiest army for 3 days. They chose death over submission. If 300 could do that, what couldn't united Greece accomplish? City-states that had squabbled for centuries suddenly found common cause. But Leonidas knew something Xerxes didn't, the true purpose of the stand. Those 3 days weren't about holding a pass. They were about buying time. While Persians died at Thermopylae, Athens evacuated. Greek fleets gathered, armies mobilized. The 300 traded their lives for Greek preparation. The strategic importance revealed itself immediately. Xerxes marched south, found Athens empty, burned it in rage. But the Greek fleet, prepared by those crucial days, waited at Salamis. The army assembled at Plataea. The 300's delay had changed everything. Here's where the story takes a dark turn for Persia. Xerxes' soldiers had watched 300 men choose death rather than submission. They'd seen the god king's best warriors fall to citizen soldiers. Doubt crept through Persian ranks like poison. Then came the moment that would echo through millennia afterward. Greek messengers spread word of the 300's last stand to every city, every island. The message was simple. If Sparta's king could die for Greece, no sacrifice was too great. Unity exploded from shared sacrifice. What Xerxes saw from his golden throne changed everything about the campaign. He'd won Thermopylae but lost the psychological war. His troops feared Greek warriors. Greeks themselves had transformed from scattered cities into a united force burning for revenge. The monument Greeks erected at Thermopylae bore simple words that still bring chills. Stranger, tell the Spartans that here we lie, obedient to their laws. No boasting of kills, no mention of odds, just duty fulfilled unto death. But the 300's war wasn't over. It had just begun. Their ghosts would march with every Greek army. Their sacrifice would burn in every Greek heart. Their example would turn farmers into heroes. Xerxes had killed 300 men and created an immortal legend. The revenge came swift and brutal. At Salamis, Greek ships smashed the Persian fleet. At Plataea, Greek spears broke Persian dreams of conquest forever. The citizen soldiers Xerxes had mocked drove his army from Greek soil. Democracy survived, Western civilization endured. But the most shocking part was yet to come in how history remembered this battle. We don't celebrate Xerxes' tactical victory. We remember the losers. The 300 who died became more famous than the millions who killed them. Why? Because they represented something universal, the individual standing against tyranny. 2,500 years later, their stand still inspires. When anyone, anywhere, faces impossible odds for principle, we invoke Thermopylae. The 300 proved that courage multiplied by sacrifice equals immortality. Then everything changed in a single moment of historical clarity. The mathematics were simple. 300 Spartans delayed millions for 3 crucial days. Those days saved Greek civilization. Greek civilization birthed democracy, philosophy, science. The modern world exists because 300 men chose death. Ask yourself, would you have stayed? When escape was possible, when death was certain, when the math said resistance was futile. The Spartans' answer echoes through time. Some things are worth dying for. Freedom, honor, the future of your civilization. Modern parallels to standing against tyranny multiply endlessly. Every time the weak resist the strong, every time principle trumps power, every time someone says no to overwhelming force, they channel the 300. Thermopylae wasn't just a battle, it was a template for human courage. What Xerxes didn't realize would cost him everything in history's judgment. He won a pass but lost immortality. Nobody names their children Xerxes. But Leonidas? That name still graces birth certificates today. The God King is forgotten. The 300 are forever. But the dead would have the last word in humanity's longest conversation. Their message rings clear across 25 centuries. Freedom isn't free. Sometimes it costs everything. And sometimes everything is a price worth paying. This is why we remember them. Not for winning, but for standing. Not for surviving, but for choosing meaningful death over meaningless life. They traded 3 days for 2,500 years of inspiration. Here's the final arithmetic of Thermopylae. 300 men chose death and gave us 2,500 years of freedom. They held the line between slavery and liberty, and though their bodies fell, that line never broke. In the narrow pass where East met West, West said no. And that no, spoken in bronze and blood, echoes still. The 300 of Thermopylae didn't just die, they became eternal. And in becoming eternal, they proved that while tyrants can kill men, they cannot kill what men stand for. The last stand that ended in death began something that will never die. The knowledge that ordinary people can face impossible odds and, through courage and sacrifice, achieve immortality.